Welcome back to Scramble Drill's Dynasty Dive. Ben Watts, Landon Davis, sitting across from me through the internet. Landon, you look tired, man. You look a little tired.
I am nothing if not a professional, Ben.
That's very true.
Straight from Orlando, Florida, this morning in a car with a screaming baby for 10 hours to be here with you. I literally stopped in, got my truck, threw a few bags of deer corn in the back, and headed straight here. So,
I appreciate the dedication. I was like texting you because I knew you were coming back from Florida. I'm like, dude, we can do this another night. It's fine. Like, I'm not going to be mad at you. But you're like, no, I will be there. We're going to do it. Even if it's late, we're going to do it. I'm like, all right, fine.
I want to get it out before the Thursday night game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyways, week 3 is over. We are already 3 weeks into the NFL season. It is going far too fast. We're going to talk a little bit, kind of a mixed bag episode. We'll do real quick, talk about the Monday night game since we didn't get to with Josh because we were recording that episode during the Monday night games. And there's a few Dynasty conversations need to be had from those games. If you watched them at all, you know what we're talking about. Then Landon and I are going to kind of go from there. It's week 3. It's not time to hit the panic button either way on teams right now, but it's time to start evaluating your Dynasty team and see where it's at through this point in the season. So we're going to talk about that, see if it's time to flip the switch to rebuild, contend. We'll see. And then to close up, he and I are going to actually look at a couple of our real-life teams we have who are kind of in the middle and see what's going on there. And then we got a couple questions who were sent into the show, too. If we have time, we'll get into those as well. So, Landon, Monday night games. I know you were in Florida. Did you watch them?
I was actually that day, of all places, we were at Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom. And during the fireworks, was I watching Monday Night Football on my phone? Yes, I was. Of course I was.
That was far more exciting than the fireworks.
My Washington Commanders were playing, and my Washington Commanders, for the first time maybe in my life, won a ball game on Monday Night Football. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen it. So, and there's a conversation coming from that game that needs to be had about one quarterback for my team.
I could not be more excited to have this conversation. I'm not a Commanders fan.
You couldn't.
I will be honest with you. I kind of wish I was because you are in an incredibly exciting place as a fan moving forward. But I was in on this guy before he was with the Commanders. I was in on him before the draft. He's the guy who I was saying the Commanders should have taken, and they did. And little victory lap, I was right. Jaden freaking Daniels put on an absolute clinic on the road against the Bengals. Against the Bengals in a game where their backs are against the wall. It's a must-win game for the Bengals to save their season.
Yeah.
Jaden said, no, I'm going to come in and I'm going to rip your soul out.
Couldn't stop him.
It didn't look fluky.
He just had, now, will this be his best real-life NFL game of the season? It's very possible. It was a great game. But that's one of the best games a rookie quarterback has ever had. Like, not a Commanders quarterback, not just this small. Rookie quarterbacks in the history of the league. I mean, 21 of 23, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was fantastic. And for fantasy, he's got the rushing upside. So the Dynasty conversation is kind of where does he land? I mean, so the past 2 weeks, if you've watched this show, we've told you Dynasty rankings don't change this early in the season, okay? The people I'm most likely to change, though, are rookies because it's our first exposure to them. We don't have a list of games from the past or just from 1 year, 3 years, whatever. This is the first time we get to see him in the NFL. So I'm quicker to adjust rookies, especially adjust rookies up rankings. So I don't want to overreact and drop a lot of people down. But when we see something like this, like C.J. Stroud last year, we knew 4 or 5 games in, like, okay, this is for real. And Jaden Daniels to this point, he's looked for real, and it is time to where you start having the conversation of, if you're doing a startup, where does he get drafted?
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I was wanting to go with it too. Is kind of, let's name some names. Where do you prefer him to some top 10 guys? And somebody asked me this, and I'm curious. Like somebody said, is what Jaden Daniels doing is sustainable? And I'll be honest with you, I got to say, yeah. And I think it's sustainable. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, it is week 3. It is very early still. But if you take the rushing aspect aside, because we know rushing is going to be good for fantasy. One of the reasons I was so in on Jaden for fantasy was even if he's bad, he's going to be good for fantasy because he runs. But
yep.
he's a incredible passer. Incredible.
Yep.
His poise in the pocket, his accuracy, everything, that in that part of the game is the super sustainable part. So the fact that you have the rushing on top of that's like the biggest check mark you could ever have for a quarterback. So yeah, I definitely think that's sustainable moving forward too.
Yeah, so the question with him sustainability wise is injury, because he's got a little Josh Allen try to truck everyone streak in him, and he weighs like 210 as opposed to like 250.
He hasn't been bad about that yet. He hasn't been bad about it though.
He has not been bad about that yet. I've seen it once. I saw it once against the Buccaneers. Got his helmet knocked off, had to leave the game. So I did see that once. But the thing about Jaden, will he be playing this way in 8 years? I don't know. Will he be able to run the ball like this in 8 years? I do not know. But we play Dynasty in 3-year windows. We don't play in 8-year windows. So for the next 3 years, you're talking about I can get any quarterback for fantasy the next 3 years. Throw out some names and see who we prefer him to for the next 3 years in Dynasty.
Let's do that. I'm not going to go super far yet. I think you and I probably both agree on who the top 5-ish are. So I think Josh Allen, obviously clear number 1. Then you've got your Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts still, even though Jalen Hurts looks rocky right now. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Those guys are there. But there after that,
anyone else.
There can be some conversation. Okay. C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels.
So for the next 3 years, if you're asking me who's going to have the better NFL career, I'd probably say Stroud. If you're going to ask me who would I want on my Dynasty teams for the next 3 years, dude, if you say Jaden, I'm not going to be mad at you. And I get it. It's 3 games. I don't want to overreact either. But like you said, it looks pretty sustainable. I would go Stroud at this point, but it's getting really close.
The fact that it's that close is...
Yeah.
It's
I would go Stroud,
okay.
but...
Stroud or Jaden or Kyler?
Kyler. I know...
A really close Kyler?
It's really close. It's really close. I think Jaden can push the ball down the field. He's shown that with a couple throws, but he hasn't shown that consistently. I know Kyler can.
That's fair.
I like Kyler's weapons better. I will go with Kyler right now.
Okay. This one, I think the answer is going to flip here.
I know what you're going to say.
Anthony Richardson or Jaden Daniels.
Oh, okay. Richardson. Okay, that's not what I thought.
Were you going to say? I was going to say Burrow. Okay, Burrow.
I thought you were going to say, yeah, Daniels. Yeah,
that's really close still.
Yeah.
But,
better NFL career, Burrow. Who do I want on my fantasy team for the next 3 years? Yeah, I would take Jaden. AR.
Richardson.
I'm going to say, Richardson is such a hold right now in Dynasty just because I really don't know what he is.
You want to talk about injuries? AR's had injuries already.
Yeah.
And if you realistically, the game time that they've had, technically AR is in his second year, but he's only played 2 games more than Jaden Daniels has. And Jaden Daniels looks miles farther ahead in his development than Anthony Richardson.
Jaden has played more games as a rookie than AR did already.
Yeah. And Anthony
We're going to the
Richardson
week 4.
looks horrible this year.
Yeah, I would take Jaden.
Yeah.
I would take Jaden. The reason is the reason you would take AR is just because goal line touchdowns, which he can get probably more than Jaden, even though Jaden's done that this year already.
Jaden's got like 3 goal line touchdowns this year. 3.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Colts head coach may be a reason. Steichen may be a reason you would take AR, but I think you'd take Jaden. Yeah.
I was almost going to say the opposite, just because like if he's outproducing him in supposedly a worse situation with worse weapons, a worse coach, and he just looks so much better.
It's definitely Jaden.
Yeah.
It's definitely Jaden. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that puts him around QB 7 or 8. I think that puts him at 8 because we both preferred Stroud and Kyler to him.
Stroud and Kyler. Yep, Stroud and Kyler. So that's 7. Yeah. I think that's probably about right now. Yeah.
I feel good about that. I mean, that's
good.
Putting him at startup ranking. That's putting him in the first round. He's a first round startup pick.
He's a top 10 pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 pick.
I'm enjoying it. I love Jaden Daniels. I'm excited.
Yep.
You know,
so
who's
the
not
other
a top
quarterback
10 pick?
we need to talk about.
Josh Allen. Landon,
what does that mean?
He said beforehand you would limit me to like one sentence on Josh Allen.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm gonna say my one sentence. He is the locked in quarterback 2 for real life, and QB1 for fantasy.
Yeah. Before the episode, I said, Ben, you get one sentence on Josh Allen.
Y'all know I love Josh Allen.
You get one sentence on Jamar Chase.
I love him.
You get one sentence on Jamar Chase.
I don't think I need to say anything about Jamar Chase. We knew this was going to happen.
We told you Washington. 30 piece. 30 piece. Yeah.
We knew this was going to happen. All right.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence.
That's the other conversation.
Direction of Jaden Daniels. Quite opposite.
Man. The last, is it 8 or 9 in a row he's lost?
He's lost 8
it's
in
9.
a row. I think it's
8 in a row.
I was hearing 8.
So think about where we were last year. Like 10 months ago, Trevor, he was coming off, he had won a playoff game the year before, and now I get it. It was like he threw 4 picks in the first half, but he won a playoff game, beat Justin Herbert in a playoff game. He was 8-3, playing for the 1 seed when he got hurt. And I think fantasy-wise, he had a 30-point game 2 or 3 weeks before that, and then he was in the 20s for a couple weeks.
I think he was hit or miss in the beginning of the season, and then he started to pick up and light it up midway through.
He had a game where he had 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and had 30. And then he was in the 20s, I think, a couple weeks, and then he gets hurt. And now we're sitting here like, you have to hold him. You have to hold him just because we talked about it earlier. In a 12-team Superflex, he was a round 2 pick in startups. You were getting at least 2 firsts for him at the beginning of this season, before the season started. Right now, maybe you could get a contending first for him, but people are really down on him. Really down on him.
You'll get a team looking for a backup. They'll give you the 210 for him or something like that. Or not 210. The 110 to 112. Yeah.
110. Yeah. But, I mean, you have to hold him now, but he's...
I was going to say, does that make him a buy at this point? Like, go see. Go just check in the door and see. If you can get him for nothing, get him.
If you can get him for a late first round price, I think he has to be a buy because they just paid him $275 million.
Yeah, he's got a 4-year,
he's not
5-year
going anywhere.
contract. Yeah, they
he's
can't
not going
afford
anywhere.
to get rid of him.
He's a talented guy. Does Doug Peterson make it through the year? If they keep losing, no. I mean, will they get in? I would assume they bring in another
Doug
offensive
Peterson's
guy.
Fault, honestly.
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's
Trevor,
the NFL.
Yeah, I know that, but
it's the NFL.
The coach will get punished, not the quarterback.
Well, when you just gave the quarterback $275, you can't punish him. What you gonna do?
You're gonna cut him. Then you got to give him like $200 million cash out the door.
Yeah, I mean, so he's got a contract. He's locked up. My guess is if Peterson gets ran, they bring in an offensive guy, a quarterback whisperer type to fix him. And I'm just telling you, we've seen it 3 times. Well, we've seen it 2 times. We're about to see it 3 times. People want the job coaching Trevor Lawrence. They just do. Urban Meyer wanted it. Remember that? Doug Peterson wanted it. And if he gets fired, there's going to be another offensive guy who wants that job because there's still talent in there. There was a throw on Monday night he made, and I was like, dude, like the ball just doesn't come out of a lot of guys' hands like it comes out of his.
Was it the one where he threw in like double coverage to like Christian Kirk or somebody, just a laser in there?
Maybe it was. It was like a laser, but it was like a 30-yard laser. It wasn't like a 10-yard out. I mean, this was down the field laser, and I was like,
yeah.
He's still got some talent, but right now, dynasty-wise, I mean, you can ask away of guys we prefer, but like, is there a quarterback that's taken a bigger hit in these first 3 games than him?
Honestly, I
don't think so.
I don't think Justin Herbert is the only other one that you could think of. But Justin Herbert's like all. That one, though, it had some insulation, though, because most people, we knew this was coming for Justin Herbert. No weapons.
Yeah.
Running offense.
Yeah.
People kind of baked that in. But Trevor, you kind of took him at his price, and he's just cratered you.
Right. And the past 2 weeks, we've been saying we don't want to overreact to 2 weeks. We don't want to overreact to 2 weeks. And I'm still there. I don't want to overreact to 3 weeks. But this isn't 3 weeks. This is now 8 weeks of him just being bad. 8 straight. He hasn't won a game in eight weeks. Like, most quarterbacks.
Superstar quarterbacks don't do that. Superstars don't do that.
Right. Not most quarterbacks. Half the league. You go 8 weeks without starting, you're benched. You're not a starter anymore. Half the league.
I mean, it's not the same situation, but look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young has won a game since Trevor Lawrence, in the last time Trevor Lawrence, before, what's the terminology there? I don't even know. In that 8-game losing stretch, Bryce Young has won a game.
Since Trevor Lawrence has won, yeah.
Yeah,
so he's looked bad. I mean, the Jags looked like a train wreck. If you have him, you hold him, and I might even I would ask around about buying if you can get him for, mid-late first price. I think he's worth that still, definitely. I think he could go back up in value. I mean, he puts together a couple, not even monster weeks. If he averages 19 points over the next 4 weeks, his value's going to go back up. So,
if he hits 19, that's a good week for him at this point.
Yeah, if he can average that, over 4 weeks, his value's going to go back up. I still think he's probably, like, if you did a startup right now, you're probably looking at early to mid third. It would be my guess of where he's going, and that's definitely he's a smash at that point.
Go in the 3rd round.
Yeah, he's a smash at that point, I think. So, but he's down bad, man. He's down real bad.
It
has not gone well for Trevor.
If you're
Lawrence.
watching him play, too, did you see, like, where he spun around to, like, because he saw Travis Etienne standing beside him and thought that was a pass rusher and, like, just spun out of it. Like, he's seeing ghosts back there.
I don't know. They were 8-3 last year, dude. 8-3.
The 49ers broke. They didn't look the same after the 49ers, though. They were 5-0 heading into that game. 49ers crushed them, and they did not recover from that.
Yeah, and Trevor gets injured, and they didn't even bring a card out for him. They weren't going to bring a card out for Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, he limped off the field. Yeah, I remember that.
They're like, guys, this...
And it wasn't like he limped to the sideline. He limped to the locker room.
Yeah, it's like, you're about to give him $275 million. You don't want to bring a card out for him?
Help the man out.
But
okay,
two very different stories for Monday Night Football quarterbacks.
I'm very excited about one. I don't have many Trevor Lawrence shares, so
doesn't
really hurt me,
neither one of us. Neither one of us are huge fans. I have 1 share of Trevor. I have 2 shares of Jaden. So
I have 2 shares of Jaden as well, and I'm excited. My gosh.
Yep. And I have no shares of Trevor where he's my QB 1 or 2, so that feels pretty good.
Yeah, no. If he's starting for you, you've got a problem.
Oh,
you've got a real
trouble. You're in trouble.
All right. So, like we've said, you don't want to overreact to anything yet, but it is week 3.
Yep.
You've definitely started to see trends with players and with teams. Now's the time to start looking and seeing. Where are you at? Where are you standing in the league? What do you do from here? Landon, I know you've got a list of tips and things that you want to go through. Hit us with the first one.
Right. So I'm sure everybody has teams where they went into the season. They knew they were contenders. They're still contenders. Like, you know that. Everybody has teams where you knew it was a rebuild going in, and it's still a rebuild right now. But I'm sure a lot of people have teams, like I do, where you came into the year and you're kind of trying to fill it out. Am I a contender? Do I have enough? Do I need to just tear it down, full rebuild? So we're getting to the point in the year where that decision is going to need to be made soon. I would like to make that decision really after week 4. If you're right now and you still don't know, I would like to make the decision after week 4 because that's a quarter of the way through the NFL season, roughly, and it's a third of the way through the fantasy regular season. So you're kind of understanding what guys' roles are in their offenses now, who's producing, who's not. So I really want to make the decision after week 4, but here's 3 things that you need to look at to determine, okay, do I have a team where I can go in and try to win, or do I have a team that I probably need to sell off some of my producing assets and reset and look to next year? And so the first tip I have is when you're looking at how your team stacks up, do not look at win-loss record at this point. It can be fluky. You can be 2-1 and you played the lowest scorer in the league 2 of the 3 weeks, and so you're like, hey, I'm 2-1, I must be pretty good, and really you're terrible, right? So
your points against are dead last in the league.
Right. Win-loss record is not a good metric. Even total points. Points for is not the best metric to look at. What I want you to look at, especially, I'm assuming basically everyone who listens to this podcast uses Sleeper. You want to look at max points. Yeah. You want to look at max points for in your league. So to find max points for in Sleeper, it's pretty simple. You just go to League and you scroll down to the set standings and just click View Details. And if you scroll over, there's a little tab that says Max PF. And it shows you can click on it and it'll kind of order the league by that stat. And it shows you not just how many points you've scored, it's what was the potential points you could have scored. So, like, let's say you started one guy and he got 7, but you had a wide receiver on your bench get 18. It tells you how many points you would have scored if you played the perfect lineup that week. Because in the first 3 weeks, you don't always know who to play. Like, every league, there was probably very few people starting Rashid Shaheed week 1. There was very few people, maybe in deeper leagues you were, but Jawan Jennings last week. Like, there wasn't that many guys starting Jawan Jennings, but then you see, like, how many
Side
points
note,
you could
I did
have
get
had.
Jawan Jennings started against me, and it sucked.
That is real tough.
It was not fun. It was not fun.
Like,
but continue.
If Justin Jefferson kills you a week, you can live with it.
I know I can expect that.
When Jawan Jennings drops 40 on you, that's tough. But you want to use max points for, because hopefully as the season goes on and you learn like who's producing, you'll get better at setting your lineup. The first few weeks are really fluky. The first few weeks, Chris Olave has 2 catches week 1, and it's like, man, I was really counting on him. And then you see this past week he has, however many yards and a touchdown, and he looks great. So the first few weeks are fluky as far as who to start. But max points for tells you kind of how your team is stacking up against the rest of the league. So if you look at this, let's say you're 1-2 and you're like, that's not a great start. Can I really be competing? But then you look at max points for and you're 3rd in the league. that means your team has had the potential to score the third most points in the league, and you're probably a contender. But if you're 3-0 and you look at max points for and you're 9th out of 12 teams, you're like, okay, there's a lot of luck here. I'm 3-0, but I need to be looking. Maybe I'll give it one more week and just see where we're at. But I need to start thinking about maybe planning for next year because I just don't have the firepower on my roster to score. So using max points for is probably the best metric you can use when you're looking to rebuild or to see if you need to rebuild or contend.
Yeah. And I guess I would say it's not necessarily the end-all because there's probably some deeper leagues where maybe you just don't have the depth, but you do have some elite starters, and you know if they stay healthy, you're going to win. You're going to win a lot of games. Mm-hmm. But that's another thing you can kind of mention is if you lose one guy and your season's over, maybe you don't necessarily be needing to be contend either. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's good.
Yeah.
So you ready for the second one?
Yeah, let's go for the second one.
So the second one is pretty simple, and this is, it's probably more of a dynasty discussion than a redraft. Sustainability. So of the points that are in your lineup, how sustainable is it? I mentioned a guy earlier. Maybe you're in a deeper league and you were starting Rashid Shaheed the first 2 weeks, and you're 3-0 because of him. I would look at that and say, man, how sustainable is it that Rashid Shaheed's going to be a top 10 receiver, which he was the first 2 weeks? How sustainable is that going to be? Like you see this past week, I think he had a 0. Was that right? I know he didn't have a good game.
He had a goose egg.
A goose egg, yeah. So he had a goose egg. So, like, players like that, when you're thinking, yeah, I've performed really well, but it's been Juwan Jennings has carried me this past week, and then you got Kittle and Debo coming back in the future. How sustainable is that going to be to carry you through a full season? The other one is like if you have a Jordan Mason that's carried you, or you've had whoever, Jerome Ford, whoever it is, whatever running back who's kind of Zach Charbonnet, who's kind of filling in for a starter right now, like at a certain point, the starter's going to come back, and yeah, those guys are scoring points in weeks 2, 3, and 4, and that's great. But in the most important part of the season, which is, weeks 15, 16, 17, whenever your playoff is, those guys aren't going to be there. So if let's say you're high in max points for, you got a decent record, but you've been riding, like I said, Zach Charbonnet and Jordan Mason, you might look at that and say, man, even though I'm scoring now, I'm not going to be scoring in the future. And you need to think, how do I weigh that in terms of contending and rebuild?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess not ashamed to say, I've had a league where Zach Charbonnet's been the reason the team has stayed at the top. But
yeah,
it's probably not going to last that long. It's not going to last that long.
Yeah, you don't feel great about it. You don't feel great about it because you're like...
It almost feels like false... It feels like false points. Just because you just know the reckoning is coming.
Right. Unless let's say you're in the league, let's use those same two scenarios, Jordan Mason and Zach Charbonnet. If you have Christian McCaffrey and you have Jordan Mason, you're fine. You're a contender.
Yeah, you feel good
if
about
you have
that.
Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet, you're fine. You can still be a contender. But if you are like somebody who hey, I picked up Jordan Mason when I heard Christian McCaffrey was injured for week 1, and I'm just kind of riding him, and he's the reason I'm contending.
Flip him.
You need to look at that as, man, yeah, this isn't sustainable. We're going to get into that in one of my teams later on, and it's like you're going to look at that and say, man, this isn't sustainable. Maybe I'm not actually a contender, and maybe right now I can use those guys while they're scoring points to help jumpstart my rebuild.
Yeah. No, I totally
agree. Because also those decisions need to be made more quickly, because once McCaffrey comes back, unless you're selling Jordan Mason to the McCaffrey owner, you can't get anything for him.
Mm-mm. And if you can get the McCaffrey teams, if you can get the McCaffrey teams first, that's ideal. That is ideal. I have done that.
That's kind of a tall task. But if you could add something to Jordan Mason, that's possible. That's definitely possible.
I've done that, and it felt good. All right, what's your third point?
My third point is so the first two have been about your team. What is your team doing? The third point is when you start looking at the rest of the league. And I don't mean like, is there one team just way above everyone else? Because the playoffs get weird, and even the best teams have bad weeks. And just because you're not the best team doesn't mean you're not a contender. Yeah. Just because you're
I've been
not
the team
best
waylaying
team,
everybody and then get bounced in the playoffs quick.
Happens every year in every league, right? So just because you're not the top team doesn't mean you can't be a contender. But when I say look at the rest of your league, if you're in a 12-team league and there's 5 teams that are rebuilding or trying to rebuild, just go ahead and contend. That you want to be, if you're rebuilding, you want to be rebuilding in a league with as few as possible rebuilding teams. Because when everybody's rebuilding, producing players, like the market is so flooded with them, you don't get great returns. But if you're in a 10-team league and there's 8 teams trying to win and you can be one of 2 rebuilds, that's where you want to be. Because that's when, if I'm the only one giving away points, I can drive the price up. I can have bidding wars on these players. I'll put them on the trade block and just see what kind of offers I can get. So I think once you get there, you can look at the rest of the league, say, okay, 80% of the league's trying to contend, 90% of the league's trying to win this year. This is a year I can take a step back. Or you can say, there's already 5 teams rebuilding. I can ride this thing out. I can try to add on the margins maybe, and maybe make a playoff push and win the championship.
Yeah. No, I definitely like that. And it's like you said, too, when you never want to be, I guess, in the middle. But if you've got a lot of teams trying to rebuild, odds are you're going to be in the middle anyway. So try to just go ahead and win. You don't want to be that guy who's trying to rebuild and ends up with the 105. Like, that doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. So
also another tip is, like, do you have any pieces contenders want? Because if you don't have any contending pieces, like, let's say this is your second year of your rebuild, you thought you might be contending, like you rebuilt last year, you thought you might be able to contend this year, and now you're not sure if you can, you may not have any pieces that, like, a contender's really going to want. You may not have any really productive older pieces. So if that's the case, just kind of stay the course and see if you can sneak into the playoffs, because you're not going to be able to get great returns anyway.
No, but it sounds like you in that situation too, you've at least got a good foundation. If you after your rebuild you think this could be a year and maybe it does turn out not to be, you're still okay at that point because you're just 1 or 2 pieces away probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, do we want to look at a couple of our own personal teams that are kind of in that middle range and see what we want to do with them? Let's start with your team, Landon.
Okay, let's look at my team. So this is a 10-team Superflex league, and and we're going to look at this, and we are going to kind of walk through what we just talked about. How do we stack up against other teams? What's the sustainability, and what's the rest of the league doing in this league? And we'll kind of make a decision on what to do with my team, because I'm starting to get a little worried about this squad, because I thought I was definitely contending this year, and maybe I am. So the screenshots, if you're listening on audio on the YouTube channel, the screenshots of the team will be on there so you can see it and follow a little better.
On audio, just pay attention.
Yeah. So quarterbacks, I have C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, and Sam Darnold. So I got 3 guys
league,
who
that's
are
great.
Yeah. So Stroud and Daniels are like great dynasty assets to have. Darnold's producing right now, and Trevor Lawrence as my QB4 this year and QB3 overall is fine. So, like, my quarterbacks are fine. My running backs is where it gets interesting. So I have Bijan, so obviously you love that. After that, my only other producing running back right now is Jordan Mason. So I really don't have an RB2. My RB2, I'd be looking at Braylon Allen, Bucky Irvin, Trey Benson. So a lot of kind of handcuff guys that haven't taken over starting roles yet. So I really don't have an RB2 once McCaffrey comes back. My receivers are pretty good. You know, I got Garrett Wilson, Devonta Smith, Drake London, Rome Odunze, and Michael Pittman. So, like, I feel pretty good at receiver depth
at this point.
Yeah, I got pretty good. But it's a 10-team league, not a 12, so teams are a little better.
And I'll say this, too, so people are aware. It's not like this is fresh off a startup either. This league's been going, 3 or 4 seasons now. So there are teams that have separated themselves from the pack with draft picks and trades over the years. So this isn't fresh off a startup. There's teams there's a lot of parity in this league.
Right, and I took over an orphan team last year. So, and then I have T.J. Hawkinson. Obviously, he's injured, and I have Dallas Goedert taking his place in the time being, which he's been great. He's been fantastic. So that's the type of asset that if I decide to rebuild, that's the type of guy I'm selling, is Dallas Goedert, because of how he's been producing. So looking at this team, just talking through, if I want to contend – so if I choose to contend, here's what I'm thinking, Ben. I would want to make a trade like this. I would want to send Jordan Mason and Sam Darnold soon, probably in the next few weeks, to get a real RB2 that's going to be an RB2 all season long. If I can package those two, because there's some teams in this league who do not have good quarterback rooms. So Sam Darnold, right, his long-term outlook isn't great, but this year he's going to look fine. Like, he's been really good. I don't know, he's the QB 4 right now in that league. So, I mean, that's
impressive.
People want the QB4. People want the QB4 on their team. So, if I'm going to contend with this team, I've got to secure the RB2 spot. That's what I'm thinking. Now, I'm thinking in a rebuild, if I choose to rebuild, some moves I'm tending to make, sending Dallas Goedert. I'm thinking about sending Sam Darnold, seeing what I can get back for him. And also, if I choose to rebuild, I'm going to send Jordan Mason and see what kind of haul I can get, either from the McCaffrey owner. I'll probably reach out to the McCaffrey owner first, say, hey, what can we do for Mason? And then if we can't work something out, put him on the trade block and send him to the highest bidder. Type deal is what I would be thinking in a rebuild. But if you go and if we look at how sustainable this is, so the only thing that's not sustainable is Jordan Mason, really. I mean, do you see anything else here that you see unsustainable?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. It's the team is really good, especially when you look at the quarterbacks. I mean, Stroud Daniels, an awesome combo.
Yep.
Obviously, like we said,
feel good about
both
that.
of those are first round startup picks. Then you have multiple second round startup picks on here. Bijan, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Maybe not Drake London. He's probably more of a third round pick, but. Even up until recently, Trevor Lawrence was second-round startup pick. So there's a lot of high-end guys on here. Yep. But thinking of it as a smaller league, there are also some really good teams in this league. It is hard to truly know that you can win it. So, yeah, you have to kind of look at it. And I think the team has a shot to – I think it's definitely a playoff team. But I agree with you. I don't feel good with Jordan Mason because when there's a clock on Jordan Mason and when it runs out, you're going to get left behind on that QB2 position. I mean, Josh has got a good team in here. I'm looking over at his running backs, Breece and Saquon. You can't. I mean, Saquon's in his not that it matters. No. But say Saquon's in his RB2 slot. You can't put Trey Benson up against Saquon Barkley and expect to win that matchup. No. It can't happen. It just can't happen.
No. Yeah. So the only thing I really see unsustainable here is Jordan Mason. So that's what scared me. If I had another legit RB2, if I had an Isaiah Pacheco, if I had a
who's on IR,
but if I had like a legit somebody like that, right? Somebody in that range where when he comes back, he's going to be a low-end RB1. If I had a Joe Mixon, even somebody like that, who's also hurt, but like I feel good he's going to come back and produce, I would feel way better about this team. I think so. If you go over and, like I said, look at max points for, it's actually not that bad. So max points for right now, I'm 4th in this league. So it's a 10-team league, so I'm in the top half. I would really like to be
6 teams
third,
make the playoffs still.
but
6 teams still make the playoffs.
6 teams make the playoffs. So right now, what I think I'm leaning towards is maybe package Sam Darnold and package Jordan Mason. See if I can get a legit RB2 that I can count on for the rest of the year. And then if I have a legit RB2, and then I've also got Braylon Allen, Bucky Irvin, Marshawn Lloyd, and Trey Benson, you don't want to predict injury, but I feel like one of those guys, their team starter, may get banged up, and then I have another fill-in RB3 flex type option there. And with my receivers and quarterbacks and tight end situation, I feel like I could make a run. So based on me being 4th in max points for, and then looking at the rest of the league, no one has gone all in on a rebuild. People had done that last year.
There's a couple bad teams.
There's a couple bad teams, but nobody's been like, all right, I'm selling every producing asset. Every team, even the ones that have loaded up on picks, have still, like, they're still trying to win. Everybody's trying to win. So that leads me to lean towards rebuilding if I'm the only guy rebuilding, because I do have a couple guys people would want. People would want Jordan Mason. People would want Dallas Goedert. People would want Sam Darnold. But just with where I'm at as far as max points for, I think this is the type of team where I'm going to wait a few more weeks, maybe week 5, to really make that decision. And I was going to say, too, I may have missed the boat on Jordan Mason at that time, but I think this is the team I'm going to hold on for right now.
And I was going to say, too, I mean, when you look at what the team has, what it can do, you got T.J. Hockenson on the way back. That's going to bump up your tight end position, hopefully. Now, given the tight end market right now, it's been bad. But hopefully that'll be a bump there. And with how the team has played this year, again, you never want to do it this early, but I think you could get to a point very soon to where I feel comfortable moving that first-round pick. You never want to jump the gun on moving your first, but I think you could get in that territory where if you need a running back, I would, and you're still looking like one of the top 4, top 5 teams in the league, and you need a running back, I would send it and go get you an RB2.
Yeah, that with this type of team, that's a move I don't make until I know I'm in the playoffs and right before the playoffs start. Like, that'd be the only time I sent my first with this team, just because it still could go sideways, but it's definitely that's on the board. If I feel like I have a chance to win and we're late in the season, that's something I definitely consider. So that's the outlook for this team. I think with what we've discussed, I think probably I hold for right now and wait a couple more weeks to make the decision, but I'm leaning towards contending if I can add an RB2. If I can't add an RB2, if I go 2 or 3 weeks and I just can't get a deal done that I feel good about, I would be fine with looking at next year with this team as well. But right now,
you've got guys with long runways too. Like Stroud Daniels aren't going anywhere. Bijan's not going anywhere.
For sure.
Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Rome Odunze not going anywhere.
For sure.
Hawkinson's not going anywhere. So, and it's and
I definitely, if Trevor was producing, and I felt good about in a 10-team league, Stroud, Daniels, and Darnold. If I could flip Trevor for a high-end RB, I would be doing that in a heartbeat.
And there are teams in this league that need quarterbacks. They need quarterbacks.
Yeah. But him not producing right now is really hurting me. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. We play each other this week. Is there any way I could talk you into starting Trevor? We play each other. Could I talk you into starting Trevor over Jaden Daniels by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. If we can work something out for Jonathan Taylor or Jahmyr Gibbs, then yes, we could.
Oh, we could work something out, but I don't think you're going to like it.
Yeah, I know.
All right. We have a second
Even
team we
David
brought to the
Montgomery,
table.
though. Anyways.
Yeah, but I like having him for the Gibbs safety. And I can start Montgomery.
I know you do.
Montgomery's
I
flat
know
out
you do.
startable right now. This is crazy.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyways.
I have another team. My team has a little bit more. Yours, I feel like, is, I know you're holding for a little while, but it's contending right now, and I think you've definitely got a runway to be a very good contender this year.
Yep.
Mine's a little different.
Okay.
For backstory, I did rebuild last year with the team. Got the 101, 102. Actually was able to flip the 101 for Josh Allen, which was an absolute mega steal, by the way. But so that helps the team contend this year. But we're 3 weeks in. You play with this is a league median league, so the team's 4-2 on the record, in 5th place.
Okay.
So not bad right after a rebuild. Team's got some really good players on it. Like I said, got Josh Allen. QB2 is iffy right now. It's Justin Herbert. I love Herbert, but I'm being very realistic with him. He's not putting up points.
No.
The wide receiver room is, especially,
great.
This is a 12-team league. Super flex, tight end premium. You start 11, so deep leagues. The wide receivers are Justin Jefferson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, and Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
I think that's real good for a 12-team league.
It's really good.
A deep 12-team league. However, the running backs, starting running backs, these are the starters at the moment, are Zach Charbonnet and Tyler Algier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, this team also has Jonathan Brooks. He's on the IR, so he will be back at some point this season to help down the road.
Right. Yeah.
But we don't know when that'll be.
Yeah, and you get into, after those two that you mentioned, you get into your Dalvin Cook, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine. So, the running back situation is not,
It's not
It's
pretty.
not a contender's paradise, I'll say that.
No, you don't feel good about it. So, and like I said with Zach Charbonnet, it feels like missing points. It feels a little bit fraudulent to be 5-2. Zach Charbonnet is not going to give me 25 points every week like he has been. Kenneth Walker's coming back.
Right. And you don't have Kenneth Walker. So,
and I don't have Kenneth Walker.
No. So, where are you at in max points for?
I am, oh boy, 8th.
Okay. See, this is where you start to kind of get a picture. So you're 8th. Oh my goodness. The leader, you guys on YouTube, you can see it. The leader is smashing you. So it seems like there's 2 teams clearly worse than you. Like 2 teams that are, it's not even close.
I'm
those
8th,
2 teams,
and there's a team with 100 points less than me.
Yeah. Are those 2 teams full rebuilds? Like, how many rebuilds are in this league that are, like, they are just selling any producing asset?
There's 2 I know of for sure. Josh is one of them. Okay. Josh is selling everything. And there's the team in dead last. I don't know if he's necessarily rebuilding. I don't think he has a choice because his team is that bad. He couldn't contend. If he sold his first to try to get a contending piece, he would still be in dead last, okay? That's how bad the team is.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, contending, he's rebuilding whether he wants it or not. That's just his way it is. And I know Josh, for sure, is trying to sell any contending assets he has. He wants them gone. Yep. So, 2 full-blown rebuilds. So, another team that's probably should, but he hasn't made the decision yet.
Okay, so where are you leaning, Ben? Because I know where I would be leaning.
I'll be honest, I'm still kind of holding a little bit.
Okay.
For the reason being, the starting lineup can be carried by its receivers. I'm definitely not selling my first at all because this season could take a nasty turn for me at some point.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just holding tight. It's another one too, kind of like you said. I've got contending pieces, but the team the way I've built it so far is super, super young. So I don't have a ton of guys that like, oh, if I'm going to rebuild, I need to sell this guy. Like the biggest one I could see would be like Michael Pittman, but he's not even producing right now. So like even as a rebuilder, why am I going to sell Michael Pittman? He's 26 years old on a new contract. He feels like a good hold.
Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. There's not a ton here that contenders would want. The only thing is if you could go to the Kenneth Walker owner with Charbonnet and maybe like if Samaje Perine has a good game this week, maybe you could package Sharb and Samaje and get something. Maybe you could go to the Bijan owner with Tyler Algier and get something, but you're not going to be able to get enough with those packages to make this team a contender, probably.
No.
So I think I feel kind of similar to how I would in Mully. And like we said, I said at the beginning, I want to make these decisions in week 4 or 5, not week 3. I would hold a couple more weeks and see where we're at. If you're going to contend, I feel like the only way you're going to do it is to send one of these receivers to maybe down tier and get like an RB2 level player and a wide receiver 3 level player. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I've
like
had thoughts and tossed around options in my head of like say, and I haven't even discussed it with him, but there's a rebuilder. He's got like DJ Moore.
Okay.
He's got Najee Harris. Is there a world where I could send, I don't know, Xavier Worthy and get Xavier Worthy and something? Because as a rebuilder, I genuinely don't know if you prefer Xavier Worthy or DJ Moore. I have no idea. But if you do, can you go get DJ Moore and Najee Harris for Xavier Worthy and something else?
I would definitely be looking to make that trade. I would definitely, if you could make a Xavier Worthy plus. I mean, like I would pay Xavier Worthy plus to get him. Xavier Worthy, I would pay Xavier Worthy in that 26 second for sure. But I mean, if you could trade Xavier Worthy, Aldrick Estime in a third or something like that, that's a package that if you make that, then we're talking about you being more of a contender. And I like the outlook of that team a lot more at that point. So yeah, I would be waiting a couple more weeks on this team. But if you're going to contend, you flat out have to get a producing running back for this type of team. You just have to. You got to find a way to do it.
And, there's that hope in my head that wants to hold out like, well, what if Jonathan Brooks comes back and is good? Which I'm hopeful. I think he will be.
Yeah.
But there's a chance he isn't. So if I go get one contending running back and Jonathan Brooks, say maybe not even, just isn't that guy this year in a bad offense off the ACL, that pushes me out even further.
Does the Kenneth Walker owner have any running back depth?
The Kenneth Walker owner has, yes, he has J.K. Dobbins, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, and Kenneth Walker.
Okay, so could you send Charbonnet plus and get Pollard? I know he just didn't have a great game, but could you send Charbonnet plus and get Pollard? Then you're talking about, maybe. I mean, at that point, you have an RB2 in Pollard. If Brooks can come back and be a low-end RB2 late in the season and you have this receiving core, or if you could use Xavier Worthy to go get another RB2 level-ish player, then you're talking about something. So I would hold a couple more weeks and then be looking to make moves like that. This isn't a team where it completely jumps out, rebuild, or contend. But, like I said, if you walk through those things, those max points for the sustainability of who's producing and the rest of your league outlook, how many people are rebuilding, how many people are trying to go all in, that's how you determine whether it's time to look at your team and say, this is what I need to do. I need to rebuild. I need to contend. I've got enough. I don't have enough. Those are the steps you need to walk through to get your team to where it needs to be either the rest of this year or starting next year.
And this is a team, too, especially in a deeper team. This is a 12 team. At what point do you consider the down tier? I'm not looking to move Justin Jefferson. I'll say that. But what kind of offer and at what point does that help? Like if you want to contend or even rebuild to try to stack assets for the future, do you attempt a down tier from some elite guys like Jefferson?
That's a great question. So I'm only looking to down tier from Jefferson if I know I'm a contender. If I'm like, I'm sure I'm going to be in the playoffs, it's all going to be about 3 weeks. Like I know I'm going to get there. I've just got to produce in the playoffs. That's the only time I'm down tiering from Justin Jefferson or Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's fair.
Now, any of these other guys, Pittman, T. Higgins, JSN, Xavier Worthy, I would down tier from them now if I thought I can get, I can down tier to a lesser receiver and add a J.K. Dobbins. Like if I could get, I'm just throwing stuff out. But, I mean, if you're looking at Michael Pittman and you think I could get, let me think of a name. Man, I'm blanking. If I could get I almost said Terry McLaurin, but if I could get Terry McLaurin.
I was going to say like an Amari Cooper or something like that.
Yeah, if I could get Amari Cooper and J.K. Dobbins plus maybe a little something, and I know, hey, I'm not missing out on a ton of production at wide receiver. He's older, but I'm not missing out on a ton of production. And I get a guy who very well could be an RB2 the rest of the year. I'd be looking to make trades like that right now. But for Jefferson, first off, the down tier can't be to Amari Cooper. The down tier has to be to
Malik Neighbors.
No, the down tier has to be to, at the lowest, a Chris Olave,
Drake London.
A Puka, even though he's hurt right now. Something like that. Like, I'm not looking to go much farther than that with Justin Jefferson. And you've got to be adding something that is going to help me win at the running back position. I mean, I better be getting a Kyron Williams along with that, or somebody in that tier.
And it was not a sell Justin Jefferson for fair value. Like I need big names, multiple of them.
Yeah. So the Jefferson, I don't hate down tiers at all, especially in 12-team leagues. I do not hate down tiers, but I want to make sure, like, the last thing I want to do is down tier from Jefferson and then miss the playoffs. And then, like, great, I got Chris Olave and Kyron Williams now, but then going into next year, how much longer is
Jefferson?
Kyron Williams going to do it? Yeah, like, I just want Jefferson back at that point. So I want it to be like, man, I really don't think I can win the league, even with all the production Jefferson gives me, because I've got this glaring hole at running back. Let me down tier from him. I'll get another high-end dynasty receiver, and I'll get a running back that could win me this league and be good for another year. I'm thinking about that if I know I'm already in the playoffs. But right now in week 3, I'm not really looking to down tier from Justin Jefferson at this point.
Yeah. And I guess that's what we did this exercise for. It's not time necessarily to make any of those decisions in week 3. But it is time to start looking at it and just paying attention to where your league's at, what's your team doing. Start getting the strategy in your head. Start lining things up one way or the other.
And those are the signs you look for. Like the sustainability thing, I just don't want you to get fooled, really. I don't
get blindsided by being 3-0.
Yeah. I don't want the fool's gold of Zach Charbonnet and Jordan Mason to make you miss out on some potential value you could be getting and you miss the playoffs. I don't want the fool's gold of I'm 3-0, but I'm 11th in max points. I don't want that to blindside you and ruin your team's value for the future. So those are the things you need to be looking at this point and saying, all right, if these things happen these next few weeks, I could be a contender. But if it goes, these things happen the next few weeks, I need to go ahead and sell, and now's the time to be preparing for that.
Yeah. And there's some contenders out there who are like, maybe you're 1-2. Your team's good. You know it's good. But Garrett Wilson, you're 1-2 because Garrett Wilson and Bijan Robinson have been underperforming. Yep. You still know you're a contender.
And Patrick Mahomes.
You've got Mahomes, Garrett Wilson, and Bijan Robinson. You're going to be okay. They will pick up. You're
fine. You're fine. Take a deep breath. Take a deep breath.
All right, Landon. Do we want to get into any questions in this episode, or do we want to push that down the road?
You can ask one. Let's ask one. Do it pretty quick, and then we'll do our buys.
Let's ask one. All right. Let me look through here and see which is my favorite question here. Actually, my favorite question is, why are Josh's takes so bad? While I'm looking through, I'll let you get into that one.
Well, Josh has never been, the sharpest tool in the shed. So anything he says, take it with a grain of salt. Mostly listen to me and Ben. If you're going to tune into this podcast, you're listening to me and Ben, not Josh.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it, and I like it.
Just listen to what Josh says and do the opposite.
Yeah. Here's one that I think I like. And we probably talked a little bit about this already. What are the value of temporary starters in Dynasty formats, i.e. Jerome Ford, Chuba Hubbard, etc.?
Yeah. Yeah, we talked a lot about that. You can use them to, like I said, when we had our steps for a rebuild episode in the beginning of the offseason, I said load up on handcuff running backs. Load up on these guys because you can trade. It's the only asset in Dynasty you can trade for more than they're worth 100% of the time.
Yeah,
100% of the time.
You will get second-round picks for these guys. You will.
Right. And that can be true, and they can help you. Jordan Mason is carrying a lot of fantasy teams right now. He just is. And so they can help you, but you don't want to get sucked into the vortex of, I'm a great team because, look, I got Jonathan Taylor. He's been good. And then I got Jordan Mason, and those two, I can ride them. You can't, because Chris McCaffrey's going to come back, and Jordan Mason, all of a sudden, instead of getting 25 touches a game, he's getting 3. And so I think, what are the values of them? The values of them are you can always trade them for more than they're worth. It doesn't even matter what their value is, because if you trade them, you can return more value than they currently hold. But it's dangerous on a contending team because you can get sucked into the trap of, I think I'm better, thinking you're better than you really are because of the points they're producing in the short term.
Yeah. But at the same time, as a contender, God forbid, I'm not wishing this to happen, but Braylon Allen looks really good right now. Really good.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in week 10 and Breece Hall suffers an injury and that team is contending that has Breece Hall, they will give you a first-round pick for Braylon Allen. They will give you a first for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could even say, I did it in a league, not necessarily advocating that you had, but the CMC owner, if they're contending, I bet you can get a first-round pick for Jordan Mason if you try. I bet and even if you wait, say CMC's out another 4 weeks, in a couple weeks, they say, we're going to keep him out. If the 49ers are winning, that price is going to go up. The price is going to skyrocket.
Yeah, and you may be thinking, that would never happen in my league. And it probably won't, but you can do Jordan Mason plus a little bit and get a first. Those trades happen, guys. They really do happen. They're out there. But I'll say this. Here's the harder part. Here's the harder part about short-term producing assets, okay? I said if you have them as a rebuild, you can always trade them for more than they're worth. The hard part is, what if I'm a contender and I have Breece Hall? How much should I pay to go get Braylon Allen?
Yeah.
What's a fair price to pay?
Interesting question.
To pay? That's a more interesting question. And I'll say this, man, if it is late in the season and you are in the playoffs and it's a good handcuff, okay? I'm not talking about, how do we feel about Roshan Johnson if you're a DeAndre Swift owner? Because
Right now, DeAndre Swift's not the reason you're going to get in the playoffs anyway.
No, but I'm just giving this example. Like, he's good, but are we sure if DeAndre Swift missed time? Let's say that offense is clicking down the road, DeAndre Swift is producing. Are we sure if he misses time, it's not going to be a 50-50 split with Khalil Herbert or somebody else? Like, so if it's a good handcuff, like a Braylon Allen, like a Jordan Mason has proved to be, like one of those guys who a guy I believe Ty Chandler is one of these guys, which he's a different level because the asset he's replacing isn't as high as Brees or McCaffrey. But if you know it's somebody who's going to produce and we're in week 13, and even if McCaffrey's healthy and you just say, hey, I have no chance of winning without McCaffrey unless I have Mason.
And that trade deadline, if your league has one, is something to pay attention to. Like, if the Kenneth Walker owner is like, if there's a trade deadline week 11, but there's an owner that's contending with Kenneth Walker, they're going to give you something nice for Zach Charbonnet just for that blanket of security. God forbid something happens, I've got that guy there waiting.
Right. And if I'm a contender, let's say I have McCaffrey, I am fine with overpaying. I am okay. Now, you don't want to send something like you don't want to send someone who's going to be obviously in your lineup in the next 2 years. Like, you don't want to be sending someone who could start for you. You don't want to send a pick that might turn into somebody who's going to start for you right away. Like, I don't want to send that. But if it comes down to it and I'm like, I could win my league and now I have insurance for an injury, which, let's be honest, an injury to a running back is probably the thing that ruins more chances of winning leagues than anything, is an injury to a running back, the guy who's carried you. So if you can ensure that with a really good handcuff, I'm definitely okay with you overpaying for it. I'm definitely okay with you overpaying for it because it's something that determines championships unlike something else. Like, there's a ton of guys, and this is true. There's a ton of guys in fantasy who are very high in value, who are young, like, let's just say, let's just say like a Roma Dunze, a young receiver. He had a good week last week, but we don't expect him to be a wide receiver 1 or 2 going forward. He's just not going to determine the outcome of any championships this year. He's not going to. Braylon Allen might. Like, there's a world that exists where in the fantasy championship, which is why we pay Dynasty, it's not to have the most value, it's to win championships. There's a world that exists where Roma Dunze has no impact, but Braylon Allen does. I am not saying trade Roma Dunze for Braylon Allen. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm okay with overpaying a little bit for a handcuff if it gives you that security in your championship. That's an interesting question, though.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one, and I like that. All right. Last thing, you and I have kind of been doing this just to finish off every episode. We've each bring one guy we're buying, quick little blurb about him of just a guy to go get based on how things are going right now. And Landon, who is your guy you want to go get?
Yeah, DJ Moore. I think we've mentioned him a bunch. His underlying numbers look pretty good. I mean, he's getting like 8-10 targets a game. Like, he's getting target volume.
I think he's gotten double-digit targets every week.
Yeah, he has not produced yet. He hasn't scored a touchdown. He in half-point PPR, he's yet to break 10 points. So I can see some managers getting frustrated, not with him, getting frustrated with Caleb Williams in the offense, which I believe is going to get better. So if you can go, pay if you can go pay for DJ Moore less now than you could have paid at the beginning of the season, go do it. Like, if his value has dropped at all by his manager in your league, go get him, because I think brighter days are ahead this season and going forward for DJ Moore. So I'd go buy him right now.
Yeah, no, I like that one a lot. Mine is another big name, and I think you could do it right now, and I think there's going to be even potentially even bigger buy window next week. It's Garrett Wilson. The Garrett Wilson managers are frustrated. I am a Garrett Wilson manager, and I'm frustrated. I'm not selling him right now, but it's extremely annoying. He's not been exactly what you hope for. Full transparency, I had really high hopes Garrett Wilson was going to break into the top 5 receivers with Aaron Rodgers. I really thought that was possible. And I still think he can, but it's just not happening right now. But he's another one. If you look at the underlying numbers, he's still getting a 30% target share in that offense. The Aaron Rodgers connection is going to get better. The offense has improved every week, so it looks good right now. And I think he's going to have a bad week, which is going to have a bigger impact because they play the Broncos this week. And Pat Surtain, I don't know if you have been paying attention to what Pat Surtain is doing. DK Metcalf, week 1 against the Seahawks, number 1 receiver, Pat Surtain held him to 29 yards. Week 2 against the Steelers. Granted, the Steelers' offense is not great, but George Pickens gets a lot of volume and is really good. 29 yards against Pat Surtain. Last week, Mike Evans. Chris Godwin had a good game. Pat Surtain was not on Chris Godwin. He was on Mike Evans. Mike Evans, 17 yards. So now the Jets play the Broncos. Garrett Wilson is an incredible talent. Incredible talent. Would I be shocked if he can get the better of Pat Surtain? I wouldn't. But looking at how the season has gone, I can definitely see Pat Surtain holding Garrett Wilson to under 40 yards. Easily.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be this week and next week. You got a 2-week bye window on Garrett Wilson open right now.
That's a good one. Garrett Wilson, I mean, I'll tell you something that sneaky has hurt his value just in the back of my brain for him this year. No. Malik Neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
Because for years, all I've heard is Garrett Wilson, if he hasn't had a quarterback. Well, Malik Neighbors has walked into a league with Daniel Jones, and he's the wide receiver 1 right now. But that being said, Daniel Jones is better than what Garrett Wilson has had, and
he's better than Zach Wilson, that's for sure.
Brighter,
and I will say,
brighter days are ahead.
Malik Neighbors has been very, I don't want to say lucky because they haven't been fluky, but he's got a lot of touchdowns this far too through 3 weeks.
He's got 3.
He's got 3. I thought he had 4.
No, he's got 3.
Maybe
he didn't score week 1.
Okay. Still, got a lot of touchdowns. So, not saying it won't continue, but it's not the touchdowns are the most volatile thing in fantasy football. Like you don't want to chase the touchdowns, you want to chase the volume. Just look at Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson doesn't score touchdowns, but he gets the volume. He gets 30+% of that passing pie. So that's what Garrett Wilson is getting right now. Better days are ahead. And he's probably going to have a bad game against Pat Surtain. So go get him.
So if you're listening at home, what I just heard Ben say is go sell Malik Neighbors because he's just getting lucky with touchdowns.
Okay.
That's what I heard Ben say.
That's what I'm saying is Malik Neighbors, not good. He's only getting touchdowns. It's like Juwan Jennings, basically. That's what he is Juwan Jennings. Lucky 3 touchdowns. Ben
actually said he doesn't like Malik Neighbors personally. This is a personal shot at Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, no, I met Malik one time, and that was it. That's all it took. I never want to see him again.
Yeah. No, luckily for him, he's getting the volume and the touchdowns. But, yeah, I agree with you with Wilson. I agree with you.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we got for today. Landon, I enjoyed this. I don't know about you. I'm not looking forward to Thursday nights. Yeah, I hope we did too. Hope we did. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about stuff, Dynasty, but basically we hope you learn from our mistakes is what this show is.
We want to be helpful. Be helpful.
That'll do it. I'm not excited for Thursday night's game. I don't know about you, but
I mean, just Malik. That's the only thing I want to watch.
Speaking of Malik, like that's the only reason you want to watch. I have almost zero interest in this game. I was looking at it and I'm like, my gosh, I don't care about the Cowboys. I know you're a Commanders fan, so obviously you hate them, but like I genuinely don't care. So
yeah.
But yeah, that'll do it for this week. If you enjoyed the episode, leave us a like on Instagram, give us a follow, drop us a comment on YouTube. We'll try to stay up to date, answering any questions. And yeah, that's all we got. Josh will probably see you later this week with his starts of the week, and we will catch you in the next episode.